Thank you for joining the Brooks Group Brief and R. We'll be starting in 1 minute. Hello, and welcome to Brief and R's for Sales Leaders. We promise to be brief, bright, and bring it all to you in 19 minutes. Today, we're going to cover the simple formula your salespeople can use to master storytelling and outsell the competition. I'm Lisa Rose, Regional VP of Sales at the Brooks Group, and I'm joined today by Anita Greenland, our VP of Sales. Hi, Anita.
Hi, Lisa. I am so glad to be here today to talk about this topic.
Me too.
Yeah. You guys in the audience, keep in mind that we will be sending out a recording of the program today, as well as a free download that you can refer back to.
That's right. That's right.
So as we were getting ready for this program, I was reminded, Lisa, of an experience that you and I had a couple of years ago when we went to LA to do that training. Do you remember that?
Oh, that's right. That was the night we went to the Chateau Marmont. Mm-hmm. We even saw John Legend and Christy Teigen at the Chateau Marmont. And there were a lot of beautiful celebrity wannabes and their agents, and they were all wining and dining out on the patio. But the big buzz that night, remember, was about Kim Kardashian and Kanye West. We're having a big party there that night. I think that's where John Legend was.
Yeah, and I think he was coming. He and Christy were coming to that party.
That's right. They were coming out. But it was all about Kanye's GQ cover spread that was coming out. Right? Yeah. They were celebrating.
Well, so while we were out front waiting for our Uber driver to pick us up after our lovely dinner, we saw all of these celebrities or wannabe celebrities, beautiful people arriving, being dropped off in these Escalades. And then this guy pulls up in a Porsche, and it was a beautiful Porsche.
Oh, yeah.
And he hops out. He has a beautiful date, tosses the keys to the valet driver. And then what happened, Lisa?
It was unbelievable. The valet driver was like on top of the world. He gets in all suave.
Oh, he was so excited.
Puts the car in gear and guns it, except he put it in reverse instead of drive, and backed right into a delivery truck doing about 50.
Yeah. It was a painful moment to watch. He was fortunately okay, but the Porsche was not okay. And this was a picture. It's kind of blurry, but I took this picture from inside the Uber driver of the Porsche backed into the delivery truck. So even though it's a little blurry, you can pretty much make out what happened there.
I just remember we were all standing around. There was a collective for the car and for that valet driver. Yeah. I'm sure it was probably his last night.
Yeah, that was his last time driving a Porsche.
That's right.
So you guys listening in on our Brief and R, you guys are the Porsche, and Lisa and I are the valet drivers.
Right.
Trust us. Wait. Don't worry. There is a difference. We promise to drive you forwards to success and not backwards into a delivery truck.
That's right. No rewinding.
That's right.
Well, let's talk about storytelling. The storytelling actually predates writing. The earliest forms of storytelling were usually spoken, combined with gestures and expressions. Think of moral or spiritual lesson parables that are in the Bible, or even cultural traditional beliefs that are embedded in the folklore. All are proof that stories can touch the emotions more effectively, even in sales. So how does that relate to business sales? That's what we're going to illustrate for you today and give you some tips on how to do it.
Yeah. Well, And stories are so effective. And here's why. There's a number of reasons. First, it helps to illuminate the human side of business. So you're a person just like the person that you're selling to. Right. You're both human beings, and you're gonna be able to create better buy-in by communicating with them in that perspective.
And you know how at the beginning of a sales presentation, there's always that little bit of awkwardness. You're a little nervous. They don't know what to make of you. Sometimes it breaks the ice and gets everybody relaxed, right?
Exactly. Very good. Also, it makes the complex simple. The bottom line is that simple equals memorable.
Right. A confused buyer buys nothing.
Amen. And it vividly illustrates a point. So you're going to remember that Porsche story. And you guys in our listening audience, if you're driving down the road and you see a Porsche, you're probably going to remember that you need to come up with a story for a particular sales topic. So there you go.
Or at least remember to put it into drive and not reverse.
Yes, exactly.
But more importantly, stories create impact and buy-in. Anita mentioned it at the beginning. It really does drive the point home. And stories can address difficult or challenging situations as well, and explain the benefits of a product or a solution. I recently bought a car when the salesperson told me he had been a police officer, and in crash investigations, they found that people were safer in this model of car. I was sold. I was buying that car.
And it is a beautiful car.
Well, thank you.
So there are 5 critical elements that you want to incorporate so that you can make your story engaging and persuasive. And interestingly, they form a nice little acronym called PROSE.
Yep.
PROSE. And so let's talk about each of those elements. The first one is players. So who are the players in your story? Every good story should have at least one person that your audience can identify with or relate to in some way. So in the story that I shared about or that we talked about is the players were me and Lisa, the valet driver, and you guys, the brief in our audience.
Yep.
So the R represents relevance. So, what's in this message for your client? You want to make sure that message is clear and relevant by linking it to what you've learned about the organization and its needs.
Yeah, you don't want somebody sitting there listening to your story thinking, how does this relate to me?
Right, right.
Which hopefully you weren't when we talked about the Porsche.
That's right. So, good storytelling creates engagement. You might not have known exactly where we were going with that story, but you were listening, and we kept it short enough to keep your attention. The O represents objective. So a story can add entertainment to a sales presentation, but the main focus should be to move your prospect or your customer into action.
Right.
So the action that we wanted out of you guys was to create interest. We wanted you to stay interested in our topic of storytelling. And
hopefully you're still listening.
That's right.
So it worked.
If you're hearing this, you're still listening.
Right.
The S represents summit. So all engaging stories have to build up to some sort of summit or climax or crescendo of some sort. And, just before the resolution is uncovered.
It's like climbing a mountain, getting to the very top of the summit, right?
Yes, exactly. Mm-hmm. And you want this part of the story to tap into your audience's emotion, particularly empathy. And in our story, the summit was the valet driver backing into the Porsche.
Right.
And we had a lot of empathy. And I'm sure you guys listening in, just thinking about that happening, had some empathy for that poor valet driver.
And as entertaining as it was, we had empathy too.
Yes.
And that's why we all went, ooh.
Yes, that's right. And then there should be an ending, basically where you're tying it all together. The ending of your story should reveal how the characters solved or overcame the challenge at hand. And our ending is that we wanted you to know that you were in good hands with the two of us, with Lisa and I, and that we are experts that are going to help drive you forward to success and not backwards into a delivery truck.
Exactly.
Now, so notice that this is the acronym. And one thing that's not on here that I think is real important is to practice.
Right.
Is to really, think about your story with these 5 elements and practice it. And you will receive a downloadable document that you can share with your people that will enable them to outline the story using this format, and you should practice it with them.
Exactly, because when you're delivering the story, you want it to seem spontaneous, and you want to make it seem like you're just thinking of it. But in reality, we all know we've tried that, and we've tripped all over ourselves in trying to tell stories. So it's better to practice.
Yeah, you'll feel more confident. It'll be more fluid. You just don't want it to sound scripted or rehearsed. But if you practice it, then it's going to really help everything to flow naturally.
Right. So let's talk about the Goldilocks principle. I call this the balance beam of storytelling. Too much of a good thing can work against you. So let's look at 3 different elements that make this up. The very first one is length. We'll start with length. It's easy to get carried away with a good story and keep it going. But if you keep it under 2 minutes, you'll have the most impact. If you keep going on and on, that you're going to lose them. And remind your salespeople as you're helping them build the stories that the story should be used to enhance a sales presentation, not to replace it. You can't just walk in there and tell them a story about the success a client of yours has had and expect that to sell it. You still have to sell, unfortunately. The second part is humor. So a little bit of humor can go a long way in adding life to a PowerPoint presentation. And the story is a great opportunity to elicit a few laughs, but don't go too far. Your salespeople should look around the room, again, as we mentioned, and get a sense of who's there and what the behavioral style of the prospects are to determine the right amount of humor to use and how to communicate in general overall for your presentation. For instance, some behavioral styles don't want you to be yucking it up. They may be more analytical and a little more buttoned up. Look around the room, and if you can get them to smile, then you've had a huge success.
That's right.
And then the third element is scripted content. Anita, you touched on this earlier. A compelling story feels spontaneous and generous and genuine instead of sounding rehearsed. So coach your salespeople to develop a handful of stories that can be used in their presentations, and then have them practice delivering it to them without memorizing it line for line. And once they feel confident on what the fundamentals of the story are, they'll be able to weave them in naturally so the timing's right. So they won't have it set in a set place. It'll be when it comes up naturally. It can be a good idea for salespeople to know exactly how they want the story to end and the most impact they want to have on the prospect. So coach your reps to keep the beginning and the middle of the story somewhat spontaneous, but really nail down the closing words for that final impact you want to have with the prospects.
Yep, exactly. So effective storytelling is a great way to empower your salespeople to stand out from the competition in today's marketplace. You know, any edge that you can get in storytelling is a great way to provide that. You know, it's just one of our strategies that's taught to the participants in our training program, Impact Selling for the Complex Marketplace. There's a lot of other benefits as well, though, right, Lisa?
Yeah, I think more and more of us are starting to see you're not just selling to one person anymore. You're selling to committees, and you know, driving through that complex way of selling has really elevated the skill set needed for success. So this program teaches salespeople how to understand different stakeholders' priorities and gain access to different stakeholders within an organization. It also teaches them how to navigate through a decision by committee process like we were just speaking of, how to better position yourself as a strategic resource by improving your business acumen and providing thought leadership to your stakeholders within the organization, you know, sending them some articles, keeping them up to speed on relevant topics, more effectively handling objections. Oftentimes we're seeing objections several times from several different people in the committee, and then conducting business reviews and so much more. This program really does elevate the sales skill level of the participants. To learn more about impact selling for the complex marketplace, feel free to email me at lrose, like the flower, at thebrooksgroup.com, or contact us at thebrooksgroup.com. We'd be more than willing to help you learn about this program and others we offer.
Now, we do have a few questions that were sent in ahead of time that we want to make sure to cover. The first one is there any time it's inappropriate to use a story in a sales presentation?
That's a great question. I would say if you only have a short amount of time to give your presentation, be very careful about what stories you include. As I said earlier, it's easy to get carried away on a story, and then you finally get back to the point and starting your presentation, they say, we're out of time.
Yeah.
Or look around the room. If you go into a room of very talkative, gregarious people, you can really derail them with a good story because your story might be too good.
Yeah.
And then you start talking about other things. So again, judge the room and take a look who you're delivering it to, and gauge your ability to do it.
And remember that 2 minutes is the maximum amount that the story can be 20, 30 seconds.
Right.
And
yeah.
So
good point.
If you have a limited amount of time, you can still use stories, just keep it short and sweet.
Succinct. Yep. How can you use stories to build your brand? Or can you? And you absolutely can. I think that's the most effective way of building your brand is through stories. I tell this one quite often. We have had a impact selling or a fundamental selling skills class, and we were working with a group of people who were selling truck parts. And so, they were willing to learn anything, but this one woman made one small change to what she did after going through that training. And what she did was, at the end of any conversation she had with a dealership or a repair place, she said, do you mind if I check your shelves and see if you need to be stocked up on anything? And 95% of the time they said, no, I don't mind at all. She increased her sales by more than 80% just by adding that one sentence to the end of her meeting, her sales meeting. And so I use that story quite often to build our brand for impact selling. So making small changes can really help elevate your game. Yeah. So there's a good example of how to build your brand.
And making small changes like incorporating stories.
Yep, absolutely.
Can make a big difference. And the third question that we had is, are there any topics that should be off limits in a story?
That's a great one.
And, I use the rule of the cocktail party, or what you should and should not talk about at Thanksgiving dinner is stay away from religion, politics, and income.
Income levels, yes, off limits.
Right. And otherwise, you should be pretty safe. But again, it still goes back to knowing your audience.
Right.
Also.
For instance, you might not want to talk about your favorite sports team if you've done your research and the key decision maker went to the alma mater of your arch rival.
Right.
That would be one to stay away from, especially during March Madness.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. So it goes back to that pre-call planning. The better job you do of pre-call planning, the more effectively that you can use storytelling.
Absolutely. Well, I think we kept it under 19 minutes.
We did. Yes.
So
thank you all for joining us. And again, please email Lisa at lrose@thebrooksgroup.com or reach out to us at thebrooksgroup.com if you would have any additional questions or need any more information.
And we'll be sending out a worksheet so you can start working with your sales reps on how to build their stories for success.
Yes. Have a great day.
Thank you.